That one.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you're in your office, jump into that conference room and we'll do both. There, Rick's setting it up there.
So are you gonna use this computer?
Yeah, I guess.
Or where is there slides and stuff or no?
No.
Is somebody already here?
Yeah, it's just structures, but you can.
Oh, I think I can.
Can everybody on the call hear the microphone?
Yes, and can
All
see
right,
well.
Billy's getting ready to sing the national anthem.
Huh?
What?
Thank you.
Yeah.
You got too much.
Oh. I'm gonna join them.
Okay.
I think Jamie said she's coming in. I'm not sure. You need anything, are you gonna need anything off the computer?
No.
Okay, because it's not shared, it's just a camera.
Yeah, that's cool.
Go on in. Hey, John, I'm still working on your account. I might have to call them.
Is anybody else in the office that wants to join in the front room?
I'm here, but I'm not just at my desk.
Oh, okay. All right, I'll give everyone another minute or so to jump on. Hello.
Hey there. Good, how you doing? Billy, did you beat Laura and Sean yesterday?
I did not.
This is Sean.
Hello,
This is
Sean.
Billy.
Nice to meet you.
He's one of the partners and.
He's about at one.
Laura? Nice to meet
Yeah,
you.
one is so.
Nice to meet you. All right. I do not have a PowerPoint or anything. I was more or less going off of kind of an open dialogue discussion. And today it's basically about, and you guys can unmute because I kind of want to have a little back and forth with some people on here, just, have an open dialogue, but the topic of this is everyday quality control. This is not necessarily going to be a discussion on our business practices or our procedures or, some of our internal policies. It's going to be more tangible things where, what can somebody do on a day-to-day to actually improve quality and progress as an engineer. On a very high level, there are basically three things. The first is knowledge. The second would be communication, and the third is teamwork. And those are very high level things, and they all have different meanings. But if you jump into knowledge, as a design engineer, on your day-to-day interactions, obviously the first thing is to understand your job role, what you're supposed to be doing, how to do things, make sure it's done correctly. That's obvious. But it also entails knowing scopes of work and diversifying yourself to understand what not only you do, but what others are doing. An example, scopes of work. Let's say we have a concept development project where all we're doing is submitting concept plans in a report. It's very hard for, let's say, a design engineer to kind of regress to a concept mindset where we're not developing bid plans. Just a concept, there's not anything that's constructible, there's really no liability, we're not signing anything. And we have to take what we're normally doing and we're just making a concept. We do not need to over-design these things.
Right.
And we don't need to go above and beyond. Basically, we're just giving them, because what the state will do is, or the county or whoever our client is they'll take our concept and they're essentially just going to be looking at the cost. And then they're going to take that and they're going to build that money into some fiscal year budget. And then year or two, maybe even longer down the line, they'll have another consultant come on board and actually do design. Maybe they'll look at our concept, maybe they won't, there'll just be a general guideline kind of. And that's all we need to do. So knowing the scope of work on a project, likewise on a design. We can't over design on a milestone. For instance, if our scope is to take a project all the way to advertisement, at 30%, we don't want to move past that design stage where we're actually developing, say, 60% or 50% plans, because there's so many unknowns still during the project, and getting comments at PI for 30% is almost guaranteed. And the amount of redesign that would be required to maybe address a comment is magnified when you over design something at a certain milestone. I know most of you probably struggle with addressing comments because so many of them have ramifications across every discipline. And that's where the knowledge comes in. And here's an example. At, some project, let's say one of the comments is to decrease a pipe slope because maybe the velocity discharge is too high and they want to shallow the slope and outfall it at the top of a stream. And they want the pipe to be above the 10-year water surface elevation because they don't want it to be completely inundated. And they want it to be realigned so that the pipe is closer to the bridge outfall into the stream, so it's not outside of the right of way. So as a water resource engineer, you kind of have your marching orders. Are there any water guys on here?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so if that's the comment, as a design engineer for your revision, what are some of the things that you would have to do personally? If you have a pipe slope that was very steep, the outfall or the velocity was too high, and they want to shallow that slope, maybe shorten the pipe so it outfalls at the top of the stream embankment. And you're at 65% plans. What kind of trickle effect for those revisions would be necessary? I don't mean to put it on the spot, but
Yeah.
What are you consider? 5 diameter, so go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, at the 65% stage, right, you'll be doing your pipe calculations, showing your HGL and, making your profiles. So obviously, if there's any changes to the alignment, if some environmental delineation comes after that, that kind of makes you change your design, or there's some roadway improvement or, tied into that, that causes a change, then yeah, all that stuff would have to be redone and it would be rework. Whereas if it wasn't done at the 30% stage, if it wasn't presented at the 30% stage, it wouldn't be commented on and so on.
Right, and also during the 30% design, we consider the utility impact. And then we position the pipe not to have utility impact. And then if that is the case at 60%, then that utility thing comes very serious because the timeline for that project would be blown because the utility relocations, all those ramifications comes in.
Right. It's very, so to the point of, that's a comment we got at, say, 65%, our semifinal submission. We get comments and water resource takes care of that comment. All right, that's gonna involve, we need to revise the pipe profile. We need to revise our drainage schedule. We need to revise the cost estimate, because maybe the pipe is, we decreased the length of the pipe. We probably need to redo the riprap outfall, because now we're outfalling at the top of the channel instead of into the stream. So we're gonna have some type of scour protection or erosion modifications. We're gonna have to revise maybe the JPA, because we're gonna have
Right, if we do the
Changes.
stormwater management plan,
changes to the,
yes, WM, erosion sediment control.
our LOD is gonna change, or maybe our phasing to the ENS has to change. And that's just water resources.
Right.
Now,
Goes to the
highway,
highway plan.
highways, now, this change is kind of minor in terms of,
Yeah.
the spill over, but
Right.
the highway's gonna have to change, maybe their cut fill limits, some of their, highway plans, maybe those need to get changed. Maybe structures has to lengthen a wing wall or change some of the wing wall elevations. The grading has to get changed. All of these things are just the knowledge of what you're specifically doing and the trickle effect onto plans. So as the water resource engineer is making these changes, if he knows, oh, the highway plans, the cut fill limit has to change, or a couple cross sections have to get changed, or just letting the roadway engineer know that I'm doing this. Does this impact any of your plans, or vice versa with structures? And it could be design related, or it could be just plan presentation related. Let's say water resources is adding drainage labels for their structures. And let's say the drainage plans are at a 50 scale. Their drainage ID labels are perfectly fit for their plan, but maybe the roadway plans are a 20 scale and the bridge plans are a 10 scale. Those ID labels are gonna be huge on the other sheets. Is that a big deal? Is that gonna impact any of the plan? Not really, but it doesn't look good. And as backwards as this sounds, you could have a bad design, a non-efficient design, and if it looks good, it presents well, you can read it, you can understand it, but it could be a bad design. You'll be surprised at how many less comments you'll receive from an agency if it's presented clearly. And somebody who didn't develop the plans can understand what you're doing, even though it may not be the best design. Whereas vice versa, you could have the perfect design, everything works, everything's consistent, all the plans match, but it just looks crappy. You have text over text conflicts and the shading doesn't match and the shading is over top of text and you can't read it and it just isn't presented well. But it's the good design. The amount of comments and just clarifications that this will trigger is paramount. I mean, you could go on and on about just people aren't able to understand or read the plans. So the knowledge of what you're doing and what others should be doing is a great progression for a young engineer trying to move up. If you understand what you're doing and then what other departments are doing, that is very essential. I can think of maybe just a handful of projects in this office where you have yourself and maybe one manager working on the project, and that's it. There's maybe a couple structures projects that are like that, maybe a couple water resources, but generally speaking, you have traffic, water resources, structures, highway, they're all working hand in hand. And as the plans progress, changes to address comments, especially if we've over-designed things at submittal, making edits to those and addressing comments becomes a very daunting task. It could be as simple as just the example of changing a pipe slope. But the amount of trickle effect of changes is, you do that for 10 comments and it can add up to hours and hours and hours of revisions. So the more you know about what impacts the design, the better. The other part of the knowledge is trying to not only view things from a designer, but also gaining knowledge of how things are built from a contractor perspective. If you're developing a sequence of construction or a maintenance of traffic or putting in special provisions for certain material or whatever have you, if you can understand the process of what the contractor's point of view will be, that development into the plans is critical. The contractor wants to know how he's gonna get paid. He wants to know, specifically how he's gonna build it, when he has to build it, what restrictions he may have. And if you're phasing something in a way where maybe you're making it impossible for him to actually complete his task, on paper, it may get approved and permitted, but in reality, it's not constructible. And that leads to change orders and overages and schedule delays. So as you're developing plans, knowing things from a contractor perspective is also very important. How do you do that? One, just experience. Two, talking, Dan in the office, he's a good source. He works in our construction division. You can bounce ideas off of him. And we have inspectors in the field who do this stuff. So it's not out of the realm to float ideas to them to say, hey, is this constructible or is this doable or what is the cost of this, or just floating those ideas. The other part of it is knowing what permit agencies are expecting, because you're basically designing things for a contractor, the client, and then to get all the approvals that are needed. So if you're designing things knowing what a permit agency is going to require, whether it be MDE, PRD, a soil conservation district, or whatever another division in a county, if you understand what they're looking for and specific things that they're going to request, you can be proactive and include all of that stuff, or just kind of anticipate comments so that you're not getting the comment. So that's another knowledge component to it. And then lastly, as you're designing these things, one of the biggest challenges is the duration of these projects. You make a submittal on a project and 5 months, 6 months go by where it's dormant and nothing happens, or It's in the review process and it's just, you move on to other projects and then 6 months later, it kind of resurfaces. And you forget what you were doing, where you left off, what some of the issues were, where the files are, some of the issues that you were experiencing during that project, or maybe some outstanding issues that were unresolved as you made the submittal. When I was a project manager, when I used to make a submittal, I would put together a laundry list of, I would call it action items. And I would include that in the submittal folder. And as the project resurfaces, everything that you may forget, or some action items or key components that were unresolved, they're listed there and it's easy to recall them. Because one, yes, you'll forget because of the length of time that usually goes by. Two, you may have different people that are working on the project from when it started. They're not going to know anything, and it's going to be up to you to kind of guide them. So if you put together like a laundry list of things that are unresolved, or things you still have to do, or just general project issues, just a summary snapshot of a project as you make a submittal, very, very helpful. The next part of it was knowledge. The next one is communication. Communicating internally with people in the office, but also communicating with outside parties. That also is a big component to what we consider quality. So far, what I've talked about is plan development, cost estimates, things that are, physical submittals, plan deliverables, things of that nature. Communication is kind of not tangible, but it is just as important. As a engineer, you're going to be working on 10 different projects at a time, maybe more, some less, depending on when workloads are. But as a project moves along, you're going to be jumping around between different projects. You could be working on a District 1, and out of nowhere on a Tuesday at 2:00, District 3 sends you an email and says, hey, I need to know where all the utility test pits are going to be required on this project. I need to know by end of today, or else, our on-site utility person's available tomorrow. And if we don't get it by today, they won't be able to get around to it for a couple months. But you're actively working on a District 1 project with another submittal, with other needs and other responsibilities. Communicating that with your staff. Hey, we need to shuffle some manpower here to get this request from District 3. Also responding to District 3 and just saying, hey, we have your request. We'll get you that information shortly. Just a simple acknowledgement. You don't need to give them an answer or some type of definitive response, but you can just acknowledge that, hey, we've received your request and we're going to give you an answer by the end of the week, or later today, or just something that acknowledges, hey, we're going to be working on it. And then lastly, communicating internally, what actually needs to occur for this, for utility test pits in that example. It may involve jumping with water resources and saying, hey, here's some stormwater facilities that we're cutting into some of the utilities. They're going to have their own test pits. Or pipe crossings, and then for borings or something, structures will have a bunch of borings around a bridge. And then, so coordinating all that stuff with the engineers and telling them exactly what needs to be done. You're going to get your northings and eastings and your stations and your offsets, and what exactly you have to give to the client. So that's kind of like some specific communication on the job. But then there's also communication in the sense of asking questions. Some of the best job training that you can have is trying to learn yourself. I personally did that in college, and, as you're trying to learn something, one of the best tools is to try to figure out yourself. And that is a very, very helpful instrument because it teaches you kind of on the job. And that works well in some aspects of this job. But then there's also the risk of trying to learn on yourself, and then it snowballs into a lot of rework. So I would propose that, as you learn, you figure out what you're good at, what you're not good at, and then asking why you're doing certain things. So if somebody gives you a task to, lay out curb and gutter or sidewalk ramps or whatever, storm drain profiles or inlets, or, lay out footings for a bridge abutment, and you're doing X, Y, and Z, and if during your process of doing that, you're not sure of, the face of curb, where the gutter pan is, or the back of the curb, or what the slope of the sidewalk should be, and if you're running a pipe profile and you're not sure what the head wall dimensions are, just ask your manager, another design engineer, and try to resolve the issues before you go down a rabbit hole. That's one of the biggest things, is if you're doing something and you kind of blink your eye and it's 8 hours later and you could have been going on the completely wrong path. And that's a lot of rework for you, somebody else, a lot of time wasted, a lot of budget wasted. And in some cases, a schedule could be blown because, highway has to lay out the alignment. Water resources is waiting for the shading to figure out how much impervious area they have for their stormwater calcs. And bridge can't start because they need to know where the bridge is. So it's a big trickle effect, and the more you can do right the first time, the better, obviously, and the less rework and schedule delays that are needed. So knowledge, communication with your own staff, other design engineers, other departments, and then with clients. And the last part is teamwork. Teamwork kind of coincides with knowledge and communication. They go hand in hand. I was gonna do a little exercise here to show the importance of teamwork. I'll try to shoot it on the fly here with virtual. I think it will work. And I guess we can be a team in here.
Right.
You guys work individually, but maybe you've done this before. But it's an interesting thing to show the importance of teamwork. But everybody at home, if you're not asleep yet, I'll give you a minute and just write down, and you guys could do it too. Just write down all the uses that you can think of a paperclip. Anything that you can think of, what you can use a paperclip for. You guys got it. I'll give you about a minute. And I'll start the timer. Just write down all the things that you can think a paperclip can be used for. All right, that's been about a minute. I'll ask you guys first. How many you guys come up with?
I couldn't come up with much. I got, maybe
Well,
got.
how many, I guess, how many uses total?
Yeah, I came two to three.
Yeah, me as well.
2 to 3?
Yeah.
One, the obvious, holding paper.
And also obviously using sometimes a pointed surface you need.
Yeah.
So like, the door open, there is a little thing there.
Pick
If
one.
you lost it, then you can use it.
Yeah. So you got 2 or 3?
Yeah, three.
All right. At home, anybody? Anyone more than 3?
This may
Yeah.
sound kind of, yeah, I have a
Clipping.
few. Go ahead,
I
Abhi.
have few too also, clipping together, hanging
Well,
items.
you don't have to say, don't say what your, just give me your, did anyone get more than 3?
Yes,
How many did you
Yep.
get?
I have like 6 maybe.
6?
Yep.
Yep, I have 4.
You had 4. Check, every hand raised.
6.
You had 6? All right, so it looks like individually, we got 6 total uses for a paperclip. All right. So now, I guess you guys can all just chime in with us and I'll write down. But now we're gonna do the same activity, but we'll do it as a team. And we're gonna see how many we can get. All right, we'll give ourselves a minute. If you guys just start rambling off stuff over there, you guys as well. And we'll see how many we can get. So we got whole paper together.
Yeah, put paper together, use as a pointed surface. For the every use.
Pick a lock,
Yeah.
could use as a weapon as well. Wrong hands.
In emergency, it can function as what we call, Laura, for the.
Magnetism,
Put
that's
the
magnetic or.
air together.
You can use it to conduct
Yeah, air
electricity.
clip.
Electricity,
Yeah, emergency air clip also.
an air clip.
Yeah, because the same is just like that. Emergency.
Anything else, guys? You
You can hold,
quiet remote.
can hold
Use it.
their glasses together. I've done it before.
Hold glasses together.
Yeah, my arm broke and I held my glasses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we can use it as a hook to hang something, or we can make a chain out of a lot of paper clips.
Right. That's very smart.
Yeah,
Like
seal
the book on the
bag
right.
of food, maybe if you have some food, you can seal it using
Oh,
that.
Get the SIM card out of the phone.
Say it again.
You can use it as a SIM card pin to get the
A
SIM
SIM
card out of the phone.
Of course, yeah, you pop that thing out.
Yeah, hair
You
clip,
should
you
probably
can
use
use
it
it
for
as
your
a hair
belt.
clip.
Hair clip, I got that.
You could probably use it for your belt, like use it to hold your belt together if the clip.
Oh,
Yeah.
a belt clip.
What about a utensil, like picking up fools or?
Yeah, use it as a fork.
Right.
You can
Or
use
a
it
skew-
to,
skewer.
It can be
Skewer.
used as a money clip.
Money.
There we go.
There you
There we
go.
go.
can be used to conduct
Hold,
electricity just in case you want to start a fire.
I got that one. I wrote that one down already.
you can use it to hold the charging cable for the cell phone. As to
So it doesn't fall off your nightstand.
Yeah,
Charging cable.
and one another thing is the gross thing, but I can still use that one. Use it as a toothpick, maybe.
Toothpick, yep.
Oh, that was
You can use it
hard.
to, you can use it to open a locked door.
I had a pick lock, I got that.
I use it a unit of measurement since they weigh about a gram.
Yep.
Use it as a keyring.
Straight
Can probably use it as a straight edge also.
edge. All right, I think that's over a minute, but you guys get the point. So at individually, the most one person could think of was 6 things, most 2 or 3 uses for a paperclip. But as a team, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 things. And half of these things I would have never thought of myself.
Sometimes.
It's just, and it's just a little cool thing, to show you the power of just brainstorming with more than one person. I know some people are, you know, the persona of an engineer is, you know, we're introverted and, you know, they just sit at a computer and, you know, click a mouse and do things and don't talk to anyone and you go home and that's it. But in this field, the more that you kind of run through what you're doing and talk with other people about it, or just simply have meetings on, you know, your projects and going through issues, you'd be amazed at how conflicts can be resolved more efficiently. And brainstorming ideas in the office with other design engineers, or as a design engineer, as you're doing something, or you know, project manager or anyone really, as you're going through a design and you're laying out stuff and you encounter something, let's say it's, you know, our curb and gutters break through a utility pole, or stormwater management can't fit within the right of way, or the bridge has to be 2 spans to pass a certain design year storm, or you know, we have to raise the road 7 feet to meet to some design standard. All of these things, as you're designing them, if you know, or you have the knowledge to know the impacts to a project, maybe we kind of stop at that point and reach out to the client and say, hey, I know you asked for this to pass a 25-year storm. If we do that, X, Y, and Z are going to occur. Here's the impacts. Would you rather have us impact utility poles, or would you rather go outside of the right of way? Having that communication, again, knowledge, communication, and teamwork, kind of during the design process, so that you can get some answers before you go too far in a project, is I actually think it's probably the biggest and most important thing to a design, so that you're not submitting something to a client and they have no idea what their impacts are. And the more they're aware of the project and the more you're aware of a project at a submittal, the less shock they may have, or the less, you know, as a client, they can say, all right, let me go check with utilities, see if it's feasible to relocate some of these poles and how much money will it cost and the schedule for it. Or, yeah, we don't have money for a 100-foot span bridge. We have to maybe decrease the design storm. All of those changes, or that direction that they may give us, is a huge design shift from water resources, highway structures, traffic, and it could literally change the entire scope of the project, which impacts your budget, our schedule, manpower, and just your design approach. So as you're working through this stuff, teamwork, and saying, as you come up with an issue, go to your manager and say, hey, I know they wanted to have a 12-foot section, 12-foot lanes, 5-foot shoulder, curb and gutter, but there's not enough right of way and we're having all these impacts to utility poles. Maybe let's talk with them about it. Maybe we decrease the typical section, or we shift something, or, you know, having those intermediate conversations with the client or water resources or structures is just an ongoing thing that has to occur throughout the entire project cycle. Because if you're designing things in a bubble in your own discipline or your own head, and nobody else knows what's going on, the increase of probability for quality control, it goes through the roof. It's almost impossible to have consistent plans that are that coincide with a report, or plans that are clean and easily understood. almost impossible to do that when you don't know your job, your role, what others are doing. You're not talking to anybody about it. And, there's really no collaboration. So everyday quality control, I think, in a nutshell, are those three things: knowledge, teamwork, and communication. And, as some of these examples I've said, it's very diverse and complex, and there's no, cookie cutter scenario where everything, one thing you do on one job is different on another job. And how you approach a client in one department is different in another department. Or one client, you may need to hold their hand every single step of the way. And other clients may know what they're doing and you kind of just are hands off with them. So kind of understanding all that and learning is very, 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 very important. I know internally, we do have very generic standards of practice, procedures. It's all on the P drive. And I do a separate training on that about the actual processes and procedures. It's on the P drive under QA QC. There's example folders, there's example forms, there's a whole procedures manual on, the processes and what we're supposed to be doing. Everybody, we don't submit things before they're checked, and there's other sets of eyes, and, every department signs off on their own plans. But today I kind of wanted to dive in a little bit more on some more day-to-day things. And if anything you get out of this, if you fell asleep or the one thing you can get away from this is just this paperclip thing here. Talking about things with other people, getting a different viewpoint. You can see how we had 21 different ideas for a paperclip and one person alone can only get 6. So that in itself is good enough to leave with this. And you also will notice, as an engineer, if you gave a project to 10 different engineering firms and they had the same project, the same scope, the same submittal deadlines, the same whatever, you're going to get 10 different ideas or designs or submittal plans, and they all could be correct. There's not a right way to do things. There's not a wrong, well, there is obviously some wrong ways to do things if you don't meet code compliance or AASHTO or whatever, but generally speaking, you'll get 10 different answers and they could all be correct. And one may be better than the other. And the point of this teamwork and collaboration and communication and knowledge is to get that best answer. Not only for us as a company internally for schedules and meeting budget and the project history, but also for the client. The less work we give to them, the easier their job is, and the more they'll like us, and the more they'll want to give us work in the future. And you gain that trust, and that's the business model where you kind of go out on a limb for them, make them happy. The less that they have to check up on you, or the less they have to worry about your quality, the more they trust you, the more work, and it's a revolving door. So that's the ultimate step. And to get there on a day-to-day level is those 3 things that I've kind of mentioned. So that's kind of all I got. If anyone has any questions or comments or anything else, or if you've had enough and you want to go eat lunch.
Yeah, I like that idea of putting a read me folder inside job folder when we leave the task.
That's very important.
Yeah, I used to do that a lot. Like a read me folder,
Yeah.
file, just like water, quick.
I mean, you'd be surprised at how long a project will go on the shelf,
Right,
or, you never touch it, or
yeah,
it just loses funding, and then 5 years later, they have funding for it, and it's,
right,
and then one is you were the manager, you don't remember anything about it. And then two, you probably have a whole new team working on it, you never have no idea about it. So,
new stuff.
yeah, you just never know.
So that is very, very helpful.
And I just,
I use that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, putting, what was the struggle we did for concept, what client, issue expected and how we deal with that. That may come back again if the client's engineer changes. So he may have that demand. And then if that is written somewhere, we already resolved it. So we can take the email and give it to him as a profile. But if we don't have a readme folder, then somebody cannot go through the 10,000 emails. So
yeah, so it's also good for just like giving a snapshot of a project. So you can remember where you left off, what outstanding issues there were, but it can also serve as a justification or summary of why you did things.
Right.
Somebody later in design say, why did you, why did you use wet swales instead of bioswales, right? I mean, one could be high groundwater or something. But if we were directed by a client, say, John Smith said, use this type of facility
Yeah,
on this date.
Yeah.
He said to do that, or why did you guys use concrete paving instead of asphalt?
right,
Something generic.
yes,
District 7 maintenance said, we want to use all concrete because we're sick of this, or
due to this business.
do this. Put that in the action items, and it's just there so that as a comment triggered, you don't have to recall 6 years ago a conversation you had with a client,
Yeah.
it's kind of there's a summary. So it doesn't have to be, hey, I still need to do pipe profiles, or I still need to do this, or utility impacts for, we need to look at utility impacts more. It could also just be a summary of why you did things.
Yeah.
It literally could just be anything you want to put in there, but it's, very important, I feel, just to, have that type of document as you reach a milestone.
Yep.
Anything else from anyone or no?
I can add one thing, just generically, going back a little bit to what you said about knowing kind of what review agency you're submitting to and kind of what they're looking for. I've noticed a lot of times, speaking from a water resource perspective, our stormwater management reports are a big chunk of our work. And the requirements for those vary quite a bit based on who you're submitting to, if it's PRD, MDE, or county level or city level jurisdiction. But not only that, it varies a lot between just like kind of what reviewer you get, on one project, one reviewer will ask for a certain amount of information, some detailed analysis, a breakdown in a table, whatever. So it's just important to like not carry over all those extra things. So if you're putting in more information, you're giving the reviewer more opportunity to make a comment. So if you're presenting the same number 5 different places and one of them is wrong, they'll make that comment. Whereas if you didn't present it 5 different places, it wouldn't be a comment, and it just makes things simpler in the long run. So just being cognizant of, if you're starting off a project, don't like necessarily copy a super complex one, or remember that this was specifically added, based on a comment, and not, using that sort of format for all future things is something that just to be aware of, and it'll just make your life easier.
Yeah, that is a very, very the consistency thing, it's very easy to do. And it's something, and if you don't do it, it is something that will get commented on and will just slow things down. Something as simple as referencing page numbers or a specific table in a report, or calling out discharge rates on page 2 and then page 7 and then page 10 and then also on the plans. Any change you make to, they say you delete a table or you change a discharge rate, you need to know, hey, I need to change plan 72. I need to change the pipe profile discharge rate. I need to change this figure, that figure, so that they're all consistent. So the more concise you can be, the better, so that we're not creating more work for ourselves as you progress on something. Because if it's easy to do it right the first time, to get every number correct, but then 6 months from now, when you get a comment and you have to change something, it's a lot easier to forget one spot to change a number. And just that one inconsistency, they can look at it and say, oh, they missed that number. What else did they miss? And then it's a trickle effect. Page numbering on plan sheets. 65% drainage wants to add another sheet. They don't have enough room for details. So they add sheet 38 to sheet 70, out of 70 sheets. So from sheet 39 to 70, one has to get renumbered, and then any reference to sheets on those either have to get updated or revised. So that's also the knowledge thing. Like, let's try to figure out, is it really necessary to add another sheet to the plan set this late in the game? Or we just make it sheet 38A, or, so the less references you can give sheet numbers or specific rates or anything like that where it occurs across various sheets and reports and estimates or whatever, the better. That's for consistency, because it's gonna happen. If you have it referenced in 10 different spots, you're gonna miss one of them. So, and then also, knowing what agency you're submitting to and who the reviewer may be, because if you get a PRD reviewer, they may be an erosion sediment control specialist, and that's all they care about, and that's all they're gonna look at. And the stormwater management component of it, maybe it's a breeze. Whereas you get another reviewer, it's vice versa. So yeah, that's certainly important. All right, well then, thank you everyone for coming. I didn't want to do a presentation like a PowerPoint just because
Yes, I think this is good.
it was more of a little discussion.
Discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So thanks for coming, guys. See ya.
Thanks.
Thanks.
See you.